We are talking today about lobbying in the political arena, which is what you're currently doing right now. I'm Clémence Couture. I'm the Assistant Dean for the Graduate and Online and International Programs at McGeorge. And with me today is one of our alumni, JD alum, Chris Micheli, who is an adjunct professor in our Master of Science in Law program and a principal with the Sacramento Government Relations firm of Apria and Micheli, and currently in between two hearings. So thank you very much for accommodating us and for joining us today, Chris.
Oh, I'm happy to do so, Dean. Yes, I am at the, we call it the swing space. It's the temporary for a few years space where legislators and staff are housed because they are tearing down the annex that's 70 years old that's attached to our historic state capitol. And so hearings are going on as
Oh, wow.
working lobbyist at the Capitol. Anyways.
This is quite impressive that we managed to get you for a few minutes. And so the questions are going to be very much on topic for you. So I have a series of questions for you, but perhaps let's start with something a little bit more general. What is really lobbying? What does that mean when we say lobbying in the political arena? And how does that benefit the government?
Well, our First Amendment to the U.S. Constitution allows a right to petition our government. And so that's really what lobbying is all about. I like to sometimes say that we're all lobbyists with our spouses or children, or as a child, when you debate or argue over where you're going to go to dinner or what you're going to eat, or what you want for your birthday party. We all do it to some extent. Obviously, there are paid and volunteer lobbyists at all three levels of government: at the U.S. Congress, at the state level, in all the state capitals, and then at the local levels. In California, we have 58 counties, 482 cities, and several thousand what we call special districts, like transit agencies and utilities and other things. And frankly, there's also international lobbying. For example, the European Commission, the European Union, and things like that. And I even know some government affairs professionals or lobbyists, for example, who work in-house for a company, and they do not just state or local or even federal lobbying, but also some international relations, because their company, for example, has a facility or employees or operations in a country. And so they might actually do international relations. And, lobbying, most of what a lobbyist does is education, and then a smaller percentage is advocacy. In other words, we spend a lot of time explaining how proposed legislation or regulations might impact a client, either positively or negatively. And then the rest of the time, again, we spend advocating, arguing, or advocating for or against a particular proposal or bill or regulation.
Thank you. Thank you very much. So for not talking about the international aspect, although you have mentioned this, but what are the legal and ethical considerations that are involved? And I suspect that you cover in your lobbying class that you teach for the MSL program.
Yes, particularly with a focus on California lobbying. Actually, it was our statewide electorate way back in 1974 by Proposition 9 that was adopted by our state's voters on the statewide ballot. They adopted what is called the PRA, or the Political Reform Act. And so here in California, for state agencies like the Public Utilities Commission, the Energy Commission, the Transportation Commission, the Coastal Commission, as well as, of course, the legislature with the 120 elected representatives representing almost just shy of 40 million Californians. you have to register as a lobbyist. And then every quarter, both the lobbyist and the lobbyist employer, i.e. the association, the company, the nonprofit organization, the public agency, cities and counties and transit districts, et cetera, all have to disclose. And what do they disclose? They disclose what they worked on. So by bill number, for example, or regulation, and then what is paid to those lobbyists, or what the lobbyist employer spends on lobbying. So that's all a matter of public record. So you can go to the Secretary of State website today and look up by lobbyist or by lobbyist employer, what is that company or that association working on, and what do they pay their lobbyists, both those who work directly for them as in-house employees, or those like myself who are called contract lobbyists because clients contract with me or my firm to provide those lobbying services. So there's a great deal of transparency since 1974. And of course, while it started off as paper records, they're all electronic today. A number of local jurisdictions in California, big cities, Los Angeles, San Jose, San Diego, et cetera, have their own lobbying ordinances at the local level and require some of that public transparency. And all of that, of course, comes out of the Watergate scandal of the early 70s and is an attempt to make, influencing government, something that is the information related to it available to the public, again, so that the public can know who is trying to influence our government and what is being paid and what are those folks working on. So, and plus there are lots of ethical rules. For example, lobbyists in California cannot provide a gift in excess of $10. That's been in effect since 1974, more than $10. Now, maybe that was worth a lunch or a dinner, but today, that's maybe a coffee and a scone, right? Also, lobbyists are prohibited from charging contingency fees because we want to take some of the self-interest out of that. So for example, a contingency fee agreement is available to a lobbyist at the federal level if you're lobbying Congress, but it's prohibited. It's actually a felony to happen in California. So again, we go through those ethical rules, who qualifies as a lobbyist, and then what are your filing obligations as a lobbyist.
That is very interesting that the rules are so different from the California state to the federal level. So are the rules mostly similar across the different states? Although you have indicated that the federal and the California, there are some differences. And how strict really are those rules? Or could I, for example, tomorrow simply establish myself as a lobbyist with barely no knowledge?
Yeah, I mean, one of the interesting things at the local, state, or federal level, and I can't speak to the other 49 states definitively, but generally there isn't any required training or education or certification, for example, that's required. So yes, anybody today could form a services company providing lobbying services. Now, whether you would get hired by anybody is a secondary question, but there isn't a college degree there. I mean, the main thing is that you have to pay a fee, and every 2 years you have to go through mandatory ethics training for about 2 hours. But other than that, again, there isn't a specialized degree. Now, there are a couple of states. I know Florida is one of them, whose statewide trade association that represents lobbyists have developed their own voluntary certification program. So in those states, and there's only 2 or 3 of them I'm aware of, what they do is that they have what I'll call continuing education courses. And so they will have their lobbyists go through those training programs, and then they will be a certified lobbyist. But that certification is from a private association of lobbyists. It's not a state or local government sanctioning that or providing that certification.
Thank you. So as you mentioned, like, so anyone pretty much could open a lobbying firm, but having the expertise and the knowledge is where, makes a difference. And
Of
so
course.
having expertise and knowledge in law, would you say that the majority of the lobbyists have some background in that field? How is an MSL helping someone who wants to enter this field?
Yeah, I mean, a number of my colleagues, both in the lobbying sector as well as staff in the legislature, have been pursuing the MSL program and that degree for a number of years now that it's been offered. And of course, we have several concentrations as part of our MSL program, one of which is the government law and policy, akin to the JD capital lawyering concentration. And the idea is that you take a number of specialized electives after you finished your mandatory classes during the first year, one of which is lobbying and politics that I teach. And there we're trying to provide practical skills for the MSL graduate so that you really come out of the program, especially if you pursue one of these concentrations, with some practical knowledge and the ability to begin operating in those particular areas of subject matter expertise.
Thank you. So going back a little bit on lobbying, why is lobbying important in the political arena?
Well, because it's important for people particularly who are regulated by the government, again, at the local, state, and or federal levels, to have a voice in that regulation. We also spend the taxpayers' money, and we want people and organizations and entities that receive those funds to be able to educate and advocate with the legislature. And of course, as I said from the outset, the right to petition our government is a fundamental First Amendment right under our federal Constitution. And so lobbyists, whether they're paid or they're volunteer, I worked a few years ago with MAD, Mothers Against Drunk Drivers. Now, while I was paid a small amount because it was primarily wanting to help out the volunteer nonprofit organization MAD, all of the folks who came to testify were volunteers. Unfortunately, they were parents, siblings, spouses of people who were killed in drunk driving accidents. But nonetheless, they came and told their personal stories to legislators and their staff. So you can have both paid and volunteer advocates, and it's important for decision makers, whether in the executive branch or the legislative branch, to hear how the legislation and the regulations that they are considering and ultimately voting on impact people, again, positively or negatively. So that's really the critical role of lobbyists in the process.
Thank you. My last question for you is, I don't know if you can tell us right now what you're working on. We'd love to know.
Oh, sure. So I'm standing outside the Senate Labor and Public Employment Retirement Committee, waiting to testify on some legislation that would impact employers' ability to communicate with their employees. And so I'm representing a local chamber of commerce and arguing how we believe that the bill unfairly limits an employer's ability to communicate on certain matters with their employees. So.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Sure.
So because I know that time is of the essence for you, I think instead of me going through my presentation of what the MSL is, since you know that, I'm going to open it up now for Q&A for our audience to be able to ask questions to you. So
Okay.
I think the best way to do for our audience is to type the questions in the chat box. So I'm going to open my little chat box here. And then I'll ask them.
And if they don't, I'm
Yeah,
happy to turn the floor over to you to
but
continue.
Beth has a question. And so
Okay.
you should be able to speak now, Beth, if you unmute.
No luck with Beth?
This is not working, Beth. Perhaps it would be best for you to type your questions. Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and continue with the presentation, and I'm sure questions will come. Sorry, I'm taking a minute to move all of those boxes that I had, those windows that I had open on my computer. So talking about the MSL program, so you've mentioned that we've had a Master of Science in Law for a few years now. For those of you who don't know what an MSL is, an MSL program is a Master of Science in Law. That's what we call it. So it's a law degree, but it's for people who do not intend to practice law. It exists at many other law schools. Unfortunately, we don't have a common name for it. Many other law school also calls it an MSL degree, but some call it a Master in Jurisprudence. Other may call it a Master in Legal Studies. We call it a Master of Science in Law. We have 5 concentrations, 3 are fully online. So our business law, government law and policy, and our water and environmental law. And we have 2 that are hybrid, with some of the classes fully online and some of the classes on our campus here in Sacramento, California. So those are the human resources and the health law. In addition, we also have a general MSL program. So if you don't think that neither of those concentrations are a perfect fit for you, or you want to take a little bit of courses up from each of those concentrations, we can customize a program for you to meet your career goals. So our program is fully online, and we teach it in an asynchronous manner. That means that although you still have weekly deadline, you can do the work at a time that is convenient for you. The majority of our students, not all of them, but the majority of our students are working professionals. So we just very quickly realized that we couldn't do a synchronous type program. We decided to move our program in this concentration, which was previously taught in person. We decided to move it in 2019, fully online, and it has worked very well. The program is very much intended for those folks who focus a lot on issues related to government affairs, lobbying, legislative staffers, and others. And finally, this MSL in government law and policy is built upon the law school Capital Center and specifically the Capital Lowering Program. This is a program that Chris Micheli did, and he also still participates in. So we have a lot of alumni in this field, not just in Sacramento, but in many other states. And obviously we do have expertise. As we discuss with Professor Micheli, we teach, because we don't teach for you to be able to take a bar exam, but very much we teach you to be practice ready. So we teach you the skills that you need for your career. We have a mix of adjunct faculty and full-time faculty who teach all of our courses in the MSL program. So our curriculum is, at a glance, you can find this information on the website, but you have pretty much half of the units that are going to be required courses, and the other half are elective courses. In addition to those electives, like if you were to be in Sacramento and you wanted to take an in-person class, you have access to all of our law classes, because as I mentioned, this degree is a law degree. So I'm listing the courses that we have that we teach fully online. Although I forgot to add one more, I just realized that we're going to launch a business organization course fully online this fall. So there's plenty of opportunities. You can also, if you wanted, you could do a capstone course, which is what we call our directed research. Or if you want to go further and do more of a research piece that you intend to publish, it would be a master thesis. You do not have to sign up for any of those courses. There's plenty of writing involved and research in the other classes. But if you wanted to be able to focus on a particular area of law, we can accommodate you, and we will match you with one of our faculty who has expertise in that field. So what is different about our online program? As I mentioned, we teach asynchronously. On a weekly basis, you will have to interact with your colleagues. So your colleagues as far as like peer students, but also on a weekly basis, you will have regular feedback from your professors. So to create a very interactive discussion on the weekly basis, there is ungraded quizzes and chat structured that to promote learning. Our goal is not to reproduce what you would get in person, because if you're signing up for an online program, you want something a little different. Our goal is to create an environment where you can assess where your knowledge is and where you're at, and communicate with one another in an easy way. As we mentioned over and over, we really have a strong emphasis on practical, real-world assignments, and we often get feedback from our students that they were able to use some of the skills that they learned in class in their day-to-day job. And frankly, I would say that our students who are taking our online classes are actually surprised about how collegial the online learning community is. So we're very proud of this. So I see that there are a couple questions. I'm going to skip through this to answer your questions. So first one, the chat was disabled. My apologies, Beth. I'm a tax attorney with an LM in tax. I'm very interested in lobbying. About how they break into the film. So the MS Law program, we have had students requesting an internship, because most of the people who do the program, as I mentioned, are working professionals. We don't have, it's not something that we do for all students, because most students don't want that, but we very much have placed students. We call that an externship. So where you will be able to do an internship as one of your elective. I suspect it is a tight community, so networking is going to be crucial, in addition of having the expertise. Perhaps, Beth, you and I, we can connect offline and we can see what we can do. And I'm obviously, like, Chris Micheli was just called, so he's not here, but I'm happy to put you also in touch with him, so you can also chat with him to see what makes sense for you. Hopefully that answers your questions. So our program, so Cynthia said, I want to be a lobbyist, but I don't want obtaining a law degree. So I don't know what you're referring to a law degree, if it's the JD degree where you're going to be able to take a bar exam at the end. So this is not this degree. The MSL degree is a degree in law. Perhaps that's what I should have said. It's a degree in law, but it's not one that will allow you to represent clients in a legal setting, such as a court. You're taking, it's 26 credits. Our regular JD degree is 88 units. Very different. The assessments are different because, one, we have to teach you the theory, but we also have to teach you on how to pass the bar exam. The MSL degree is, we're teaching you the skills and we're opening you the door to a network for you to be able to start your career in a particular area of law. So I would say, like, we have a lot of students who are enrolled in this program who actually are doing this program because they're intending on becoming a lobbyist, or they're already a lobbyist and they want to just have that legal knowledge, law is still omnipresent in the lobbying world. So I think this degree could be a very good degree for you. Are you able to share how many people apply for the program versus how many spots are available? So we don't keep track of that data. We max our classes. The big max is 20 students per class. And I know it seems small, but it's because, as I mentioned, we really want to put a strong emphasis on the weekly interaction. And we want students to be able to get to know each other. And if the class is too big, it just simply does not happen. And we want the students to be able to create that relationship with their professor, such as with Professor Micheli. We usually have a group of 10 to 15 students. So I can tell you that there is always a little bit, like if we were to have like a couple of very strong application at the last minute, we would be able to admit them. I hope that answers somewhat your question. Obviously, Lexi, I'm also happy to meet with you separately to talk about your application, your background, your profile, and how that would work with the MSL degree and the MSL admission process. So thank you, Beth, for your email. I'm also going to switch here so you can get my email address here. I'm going to also put it in response to your question, Beth. I'm going to put my email address here so everybody can copy paste that, and my phone number. So it should now show up in the answer. I think this is a fantastic program for people who wants to enter this world. Just because not only you're going to get the legal knowledge, but you're also going to get the policy knowledge that often intertwine with law, but you're also getting the networking, access to the network. We have many lobbyists who have graduated from the MSL program. Also happy, you know, like if some of you like want to email me separately and you want to talk with someone who's done the program and who's a lobbyist, like I'm very happy to put you in touch with. Professor Micheli also, I know, would be happy to answer any of your questions. If you're here in Sacramento, we can also meet. Tons of options. And we have fantastic professors in the program. But what other questions do you have? So if you want to become both a lobbyist and an attorney, you don't want to do the MSL program then. If you want to become an attorney, you need to do the JD program. The JD program, the admission process is very different from the MSL. If you do the MSL, you won't be able to transfer any of those units towards the JD program because, as I mentioned, even though the law is the same, the way we teach it is very different. Well, I shouldn't say it's very different. It is different. And the admission process, therefore, is also different. To be admitted into, to be considered for admission into our JD program, you must take the LSAT exam. And you don't need this for the MSL program. As far as internship as a lobbyist with when you're doing your JD program, this is not a program that I oversee, but I don't think you will be able to intern for a lobbyist while doing your JD program because the American Bar Association has very strict regulation on what type of internship we can let students do and still earn credits. And it needs to be a nonprofit organization, and lobbyists are never a nonprofit organization. However, you may be able to find an internship for a lobbyist who is a lobbyist, in-house lobbyist for a nonprofit organization, which is possible. But so you're reducing a little bit more your niche. But the MSL program, where we don't have the same regulation, it does not have, the externship does not have to be just for nonprofit employers. So you would be able to get an externship for a lobbyist with the MSL program. What other questions? What other questions do you guys have? So 6 units is it considered full-time? It is considered more than part-time for financial aid purposes. And I don't know if that's where your question is going to, but you need to take more than 4 units in order to, 4 units is part-time. So in order to be able to get the full-time financial aid benefits. Was your questions because of financial aid or for other reason? Yeah, okay. So yes, it would be considered, for financial aid, like the count, it needs to be more than part-time. That's how they work. You can also take more than 6 units a term if you wanted and if you could. We've had students who've taken 3 classes a term. One even did 4 classes. She did the program full-time. She didn't have anything else to do outside of school. So that's why she had that flexibility. And for any financial aid question, I'm always a little hesitant to answer them because I feel like I don't keep a good pulse on all of the changes in regulation. So I will put the contact information, the email address of my colleague who oversees the financial aid for McGeorge School of Law. And he'll be able to work with you on financial aid. And his name is Joe Pincus. And for those of you, if you benefits from the VA, we also have, we're part of the Yellow Ribbon program where we will match any benefits that you get directly from the VA. And so if you have this and you still have your full benefits, it's likely going to cover all of your tuition. We may have to do a little bit of working on some of the classes that you're going to take, because I know the VA, to get the full benefits and to get some also the living expenses benefits, like you cannot take too many online classes, but we'll be able to work with you on that. Yes, so the program and the tuition is based on a per unit basis. So you have to take 26 units. If you take your 26 units over 2 semesters and a summer, then that's it, you're done. And the tuition is the same whether you do it over 1 year or whether you do it over 2 years or 3 years or 4 years, because we only charge you for the units that you're taking that term. Obviously, sometimes there's a little bit of tuition increase from year to year, but other than that, like, it's not a flat fee. So if you take, you can finish the program sooner if you take more classes in a semester. Yes. So for those of you who are here usually and interested in applying for the program to graduate law at pacific.edu and ask them for an application fee waiver. So you don't have to pay, I think the application fee is $50, but we'll be happy to provide you with a coupon code to waive that application fee for you. Any other questions? Okay, well, seeing none, I don't want all of us to just stare at each other, which is mostly me staring at myself since I cannot see you. So I'm going to call this webinar to an end. I very much enjoyed the conversation with you, even though it was just via text. If you want to learn more, if you want to chat and just see really if this is the right program for you or have additional questions, really do reach out to me, send me an email. We'll set up time to do a Zoom meeting, to do one-on-one if you're in Sacramento. I'm also happy obviously to call you. So thank you for your time, and I look forward to continuing the conversation offline. Thank you. Bye.